Welcome to episode 134 of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. It is Thursday. It's New Year's Eve. We're almost over with this godforsaken year that is 2020. And to celebrate that fact, I guess you could say, Ian Schultz is back with us on the podcast. We couldn't get Jake in here, couldn't get the trio back together, but we do have Ian back. So I know it's been pretty much the entire football season. We haven't been able to check in with Ian here, so it'll be good to get his thoughts here as we head into Week 17. One game left for the Ravens. They control their own destiny. A lot has happened this past weekend for the Ravens in the NFL, and I don't know. Just before we dive into all the madness, Ian, your first thoughts following the Ravens win, and then obviously the Steelers win, the Jets win somehow, and now the Ravens control their own destiny with one game left.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for having me back on. Want to start off with that. Definitely missed linking up with you guys, but the longer you wait for the help, you start to get into those scenarios where you're not going to get it. So I was happy to see the Steelers and the Jets win. I was pretty confident the Ravens were eventually going to get their help. The Ravens are playing really good football. I fully expected them to handle the Giants as they did. We'll get into next week's game, but I fully expect them to win again on Sunday. And it was good the Ravens finally got their help. It was nice not to have to scoreboard watch this week. Just worry about the Ravens winning their game against Cincinnati, and they'll get in.
Well, speaking of needing help and how that level of concern getting higher and higher, what a change in less than 24 hours. You go from Saturday night with the Dolphins and Raiders game, and I was all in on this game because I did not want to even root for Pittsburgh for a second. And you have there's such this big luxury that this game is played on a Saturday night and then the Ravens play on Sunday. You can go into Sunday morning. You can wake up Sunday morning knowing that you control your own destiny. And I'm not even going to get into the finish of that Raiders game. Whether you agree or disagree with the decision to kick the field goal instead of trying to get a touchdown or not, I think we can all agree that was one of the worst collapses maybe of this entire season and probably the past couple of years, to have like 19 seconds, no timeouts, and you lose the game because not only did you give up a big pass play, but you were roughing the passer and had a face mask and all this stuff. What just a terrible collapse. And such a mood swing from Saturday night to Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I mean, that was a train wreck. I think everybody in Baltimore was kind of tuned into that one. Looked like it was going to break their way, and they weren't going to have to wait for Sunday to get their help. But I mean, what an epic meltdown from a team that hasn't had much success lately, but it seemed like they might be riding the ship this year. But I mean, they're still a team that has proven nothing, and we shouldn't expect anything out of them moving forward. But props to Fitzy. I mean, that guy is a rare breed, and to come in and make that play, yeah, the Raiders helped him with the stupid personal foul, but I mean, he still got the ball off, still pushed it down the field. Somehow that guy was wide open. I mean, it's just the whole thing was a mess, but definitely a huge swing of emotions there late.
And then you get to Sunday. Steelers was obviously kind of the game to watch there. Pretty even matchup against the Colts, two prospective playoff teams. Steelers with a 3-game losing streak. You're saying there's no way they can lose 4 in a row, right? They're at home. Doesn't matter who they're playing. They've got to get back on track against somebody. And the first half didn't look good. Start of the third quarter didn't look good, but they ended up pulling it out. And then the entire time, I would say pretty much the entire first half where the Steelers were trailing, our attention started to shift to the Jets and the Browns game, because all of a sudden the Jets are up, 20-6 or something, or 20-3 on the Browns. And I know the Browns had a little COVID scare right before their game, so they lost like their entire receiving core. And still, it's the Jets. And there's been questions about whether the Jets are even trying to win at points this year. So the Jets win 2 in a row. That's absurd. Cleveland loses to them on the brink of getting into the postseason for the first time in forever. And if they won that game and the Steelers lost, they would be playing for the division the following week, everything on the line, and Cleveland lays maybe the biggest egg of all time. So it's nice that we can say that the Jets gave us help, which, how many times have we said that the Jets are pretty much the Ravens' minor league affiliate, or where all the former Ravens go to die, I guess. They get it done. But the most important thing, the Ravens win. They beat the Giants 27-13, fourth straight win. They're rolling since the return of Lamar Jackson, and really this entire team returned from the COVID list and that huge nightmare that was the Thanksgiving week, Steelers week debacle. 4 straight wins following that loss, and they're right back in it. Like I said, they got one more win. That's all they need. One win, they're in. They don't need any help. Problem is, I guess if you want to call it a problem, it's a division opponent on the horizon. It's the Cincinnati Bengals, and since today is New Year's Eve, and
PTSD.
yes, if that, just mentioning those two things, New Year's Eve, Cincinnati Bengals, doesn't already strike that memory for you. Just a few years ago, 2017, the coldest game in Ravens, home game in Ravens history, I believe. I wish we could have had Jake on. Jake and myself went to that game together. What a nightmare. Nothing needs to be said. The Ravens lose. We get stuck on the light rail on the way home. Full-on nightmare. But we'll save the preview for later. Let's talk about the Ravens game in particular. I don't know. I guess I just want to start with kind of the game flow because, the Ravens came out on offense. They started with the ball and had an 8-minute touchdown drive, followed it up on defense with a 3-and-out, and then got another touchdown on the ensuing drive. So just complete control from the jump, sort of those long methodical touchdown drives that we saw last year. It was pretty much commonplace last year. They seem to have returned with this year with the run game getting back to full force. Mark Ingram has been a healthy scratch the past couple weeks, but the trio of Lamar Jackson running with Gus Edwards and then J.K. Dobbins has just got this offense operating at really close to, if not they're already there, their peak potential, in my opinion. Just with the guys that they had. You look at all the injuries that they've had, season-ending injuries that you're thinking when they happen along the way in the season, this is going to be devastating, and it sort of is. But the point I want to make is, look at how good the offensive line has been these past couple weeks. It's not just these backs. They're certainly talented. We love Gus Edwards. We love Dobbins. Obviously love what Lamar can do with their legs. But look at what this offensive line is doing without Ronnie Stanley and without Nick Boyle, who's a glorified offensive lineman, in this offense especially. They're doing great things. Guys that are playing a backup role have stepped up and learned things very quickly. And it's just a well-oiled machine. Everything seems to be going great. And all of a sudden, the complaints about Greg Roman have sort of disappeared. So it's funny how that happens, right?
Yeah, it's almost like winning is all that really matters. So if we're winning, we're coaching well. If we're losing, it's because we're not coaching well. And that's something that, you see me going back and forth with people all the time about it. Like, it's about execution, and it's about being healthy, and it's about, listen, Greg Roman could call the best player in the world, but if the players don't execute it, it doesn't matter. And it takes a ton to make it work and to make it work consistently. The other problem the Ravens have too, like you said, is most of their scoring drives are long, methodical drives because of the nature of their offense. One false start penalty puts you behind the eight ball, one holding penalty, one offensive pass interference. They have to be incredibly efficient and not make mistakes in order to move the ball up and down the field. But like you said, I mean, Joe D'Alessandris, offensive line coach, I mean, what a job he's done getting this group to gel. And listen, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that the last 4 weeks, the Ravens haven't played many good teams either. I'm not saying that rules them out. It doesn't mean they're not playing well, and they're doing exactly what you should do to poor teams, and that's crush them. Um, so the Ravens are, like you said, I mean, they're rolling on offense again. Their run game's completely unstoppable. They're starting to mix in a little more in the passing game, and I mean, they should be commended for how they're playing. You're right. They're starting to get back to that. We score a touchdown, 3-and-out. We score a touchdown again, and you're done. Now, as I mentioned, that'll change. Maybe this week Cleveland, Cincinnati's playing pretty well on offense, but once you get into the playoffs, most of these teams, 10-0, 14-0, they don't feel out of it. Even Pittsburgh, who people mock their offense at times, 24-7 down, they come all the way back. So, that's the nature of this league. I try really hard to not get too high or too low. It's just a matter of who plays better on that given Sunday. And, I watched Ravens fans watch that Steelers game, and I learned a lot because the Steelers fall down 10-0, 14-0. Everybody's like, the Steelers sucked. Yeah, thanks for nothing. Watch, just calm down. It's a long game. You got to play well for 60 minutes to win it most of the time. And, you can have a bad half and figure it out in the second half. We've seen the Ravens do that too. I don't know. I understand everybody fans differently, but I'm more of a wait and see approach kind of person. Especially in a regular season game, there's a little more urgency in the playoffs, but falling behind 14-0 in the NFL is really not a big deal. I mean, most of these teams are capable of running that game down. And while the Ravens haven't proven it, they haven't been down 14-0 very often either. So, and I hope they don't have to prove that. I'd like to. Front running is good. I don't think we should think of that as such a negative either. But good win against the Giants. Defense. I mean, they just need to get more healthy. Unfortunately, I think, and I wanted to talk to you about this. I mean, at what point do we stop waiting for them to get healthy on defense? Like, are you confident the secondary is going to be healthy week 1 of the playoffs?
That's a good transition. That's where I was going next. I am not confident right now, even though it appears Marcus Peters is back at practice. I think the big question mark is just Jimmy Smith at this point, which you'd love to have him out there because there's no denying that when he's been healthy this year,
and
he's
every
producing especially this year, he's been producing like a guy that's, 5 years younger.
Right.
You're really getting a lot out of that 1-year deal, even with the injuries, I would say. That 1-year deal has paid off pretty big for you. So if you're missing one guy, not the worst thing in the world. I would be nice to just have 2 solid guys back, 2 guys that you can trust, really just pair someone with Marlon Humphrey. And if that's Marcus Peters, I know some people are down on him, but I'll gladly take him in his IQ out there and roll the dice and have a chance to make a game-breaking, interception. Whether it's this week or in the playoffs, I'll take those odds. Behind them, it's sort of been baptism by fire because we were not – no one in this fan base was really happy with Anthony Averett when the season started. And then he gets thrown into the fire when
Tremont Williams and Devontae Harris both got hurt too. 2 guys that weren't even a part of this roster, at the start of the season. I mean, they've been, thrust into action and both have played pretty well. But, it goes back to what I was saying last week, and I'll let you keep expanding here. You don't want Anthony Averett playing 55 snaps in a playoff game.
No, absolutely not. I'd say it's I agree with you, but I'm saying if you need to fill one spot, Anthony Averett, I think, has come a long way. I'm not going to feel extremely confident with him. But it's also, I think that goes to the point you have the health of the entire defense. The secondary is the focus right now because you're missing so many guys, and the guys you bring in to replace them are getting hurt. It's just been a revolving door, and we know very well that a weakened secondary, a significantly weakened secondary, can ruin a good, solid team's chances of making a run. Just look at 2014. I don't know. I think even if Jimmy is ready or somewhat ready to play this week, I think you give him that extra week to sit. They did that this past week with Marcus Peters. It seems like he was healthy enough to play. Just give him the time to rest up. But, to me, it's elsewhere on defense. Calais Campbell, is he 100%? I know he's playing again, but you watch him play, he just doesn't look like that Calais Campbell that we expect. Still a force in the run game. Just by his sheer size, he's probably going to continue to be a pretty good run stuffer, and you pair him next to other excellent run stuffers with Brandon Williams, Derek Wolfe, he's probably going to fit in all right. But in terms of generating a pass rush, it's just not there the way it was. So can he get fully back to 100%? That will be a big factor. The pass rush in general, healthy or not, can that actually generate something consistently against good opponents so that the secondary doesn't have to be, field an all-pro secondary? Can we actually help them out by getting a pass rush? There's so much on my mind as far as this defense. But, what are your thoughts about the health elsewhere on the team? Calais Campbell, Jimmy Smith, Marcus Peters. We saw other guys get banged up. Deshaun Elliott got banged up. I think he's okay. But a lot of question marks.
It is interesting to see the last, 5 weeks how things have kind of changed. The focus of the fan base and the concerns have moved to the defensive side of the ball. I mean, remember before the Dallas game, it was Greg Roman needs to be fired. Hollywood Brown stinks. Miles Boykin's horrible. They got nothing on offense. All of these things were issues. And now we're starting to turn to the other side of the ball, which, it's interesting to see the way a season develops. But as far as Marcus Peters is concerned, listen, I don't think it's controversial to say Marcus Peters hasn't had a great year, but the Ravens are 1,000% better with Marcus Peters in the game than they are without him in the game. So getting him back to me is key. And if he's fully ready to go this week, then he should be out there. But if he's not, I mean, it becomes a tough decision because Cincinnati's been scoring a ton of points. They've got a nice receiving group. You could probably use Marcus Peters against this team. It doesn't sound like Jimmy Smith will be out there, but things can change between now and Sunday, and maybe they get some of the other guys back. Harris and Tremont Williams and Averett, can continue to play well. But Calais Campbell, the main thing for me is he can be disruptive without getting sacks, but his pressures and stuff like that have been going down for a few years. I think that's why, while people were excited for the move and we look at the big pass rush numbers from a few years back, it's not quite the same player that he was then. And that's part of it. But it would help to have him fully healthy. And, he gets those big mitts up there and knocks a ball in the air. The Ravens can come up with a game-changing play. Here's what, and what you said is so true. What it comes down to oftentimes in the playoffs is how many big plays can you make? Can Marcus Peters read the quarterback's eyes and jump a route and go the other way? Ravens down 10-0. He picks the ball off at the 40 and picks sixes. I mean, those are the type of plays that get you back in the game, that get you energized, that, help you upset some teams that you might play. And I think the Ravens are arguably the third best team in the AFC. But if you want to get to the AFC to the AFC Championship and further, you're going to have to beat one of those other teams more than likely. So any chance of those guys being as healthy as possible is ideal. It just sucks that, this year they really need the rest and they don't have the opportunity to give it. Whereas last year they probably didn't need to rest, but we gave it to them anyways. And, it didn't end up well, who knows whether it was the right decision? I think it was, but it didn't have the intended results. Would have been nice if the Ravens could have given some of these guys an extra week, but this is the situation they're in. They let a couple games slip away, and they've got to play some guys that might do better with an extra week. But overall, just beat Cincinnati and try to get out of there as healthy as you can, and see where you are, where the dust settles, when see where you're going to head in the playoffs. That's kind of the main focus for me.
I definitely agree that, the health is going to be a huge factor in how far this team can actually go. But to your point about how things have changed from just a couple weeks ago, the offense being, the focal point of this fan base of what's wrong. The defense is playing great; they can do no wrong. The offense is terrible. All these question marks, and then it flips. And injuries have a lot to do with that, but it's also performance. Before the change, defense was carrying the offense in a lot of ways. They were, keeping the offense in it. Even in some of the losses, you look at all the chances they gave the offense to actually tie the game, take the lead, and the offense couldn't do it. Now that it's flipped, Lamar looks like the MVP again. It's a well-oiled machine. No one can stop the run. They're ripping off these 7-8 minute drives. That's helping the defense. When you got a banged up defense, offense being out there as long as possible and actually finishing with a touchdown, that is huge. Like we saw in this Giants game, touchdown, defense does their job, forces a punt, offense gets the ball back, gets another touchdown. Like you said before, a team that's not the Giants, an actual playoff team, although somebody on the Giants' caliber will make the playoffs from that division, but an AFC playoff team, we'll say that, an AFC playoff team is going to still be in the game down 10, down 14. But if the offense can get that lead, it does take some pressure off the defense. And at that point, if you're not 100% healthy, you're still feeling all right, where you don't need guys to play above their, capabilities. You don't need Anthony Averett to go out there and be Marlon Humphrey at that point. You just need him to be solid. I think the offense, a lot of the pressure is back on the offense at this point. Keep the opposing offense, and you look at some of these quarterbacks, Pat Mahomes, all these guys. I mean, keep them on the sideline as long as possible. That's only a benefit. So
I like what you said. Though, about finishing drives. I mean, if you watch enough of the rest of the league right now in the AFC, you're not winning many playoff games if you don't score 35 points. It's not happening. I mean, you're not beating Tennessee. You're not beating Cleveland. You're not beating Kansas City. You're not beating Buffalo if you can't score 30 to 40 points in the game, more than likely. I mean, now your defense can have a big day. You could keep those guys to 24 or 27 potentially, but you got to finish drives. If you look back at the Tennessee loss, and we've done it a million times, eight times you're inside the 35-yard line. You got to score touchdowns. And it's unfair in a way, to the offense, but this is 2020 in the NFL. I mean, look at the Bills. Just they walk up and down the field. They score touchdowns almost every time they have the ball. Kansas City shows they can do that. Tennessee and Cleveland have shown they can do that. These are teams that you might have to deal with at some point. So I think at the end of the day, I think the defense will be able to do enough to keep the offense, hanging in there if the offense isn't finishing drives. But if the offense can finish drives, and the way the Ravens can take, as you said, the best players off the field, the other team's quarterbacks. Listen, I am not known as Captain Optimist. Whether I think that's fair or not is another story. But I think this team has a chance to make some noise if they win on Sunday. I think that they've got. I mean, whose defense in the AFC is definitively better than the Ravens right now?
nobody jumps to mind.
I mean, Indianapolis maybe, but I mean, they might not even get in. Tennessee can't stop anyone. Kansas City can't stop anyone. Pittsburgh's defense is just as banged up as the Ravens and inconsistent. Now they've got the playmakers like the Ravens do that can swing a game. I mean, I'm not scared of the Bills defense. They've got some decent playmakers, but they're not a world-beating defense. So it's going to come down to me, if the Ravens can play the best defense in the AFC throughout the playoffs, their offense is good enough to get them there in the end. But again, it all comes down to finishing drives. It all comes down to execution. Fair or unfair, if the Ravens fall down 10-0, I've got a little bit of concern that they're going to be able to dig out of that hole, depending on, can we not panic? Because whether this is fair or not is questionable, but I don't trust the Ravens to have to win a game through the air. I just don't do it. I can't trust that yet. I haven't seen it consistently. I haven't seen it against a good team. Now, they might not have to do it. But if it's 17-0 at the end of the first quarter, I'm not terribly confident the Ravens are coming back in that game. So, whereas if you've got a Josh Allen, you've got a Mahomes, teams that are more heavily reliant on their ability to throw the ball, you could see them coming back quicker. And it's not to say the Ravens can't do it, but they're not built that way. They're not built that way at the wide receiver position. The quarterback, I think he throws the ball much better than I ever thought he would. Is he an elite passer? I don't know. Maybe. But, I think the goal is finish drives. That was kind of where I started here and where I'll finish. If they are able to win Sunday and they're able to finish drives in the postseason, they're going to be a really tough out for whoever they run into.
Absolutely. And what is contributing to finishing these drives, it starts with the run, like you said. And this Sunday, one of the best rushing performances of the season, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and Lamar Jackson all rushed for at least 75 yards. They had just under 250 total rushing yards. I think they were at 249. That's their third highest rushing total of the season, second highest total yard performance.
And the Giants defense isn't bad either. I mean, that's the strength of their team. So I was impressed. Listen, anytime you're racking up 400 yards, 500 yards of offense, 250 on the ground, it kind of doesn't matter who you play. And eventually you'll run into better teams overall. But like we just said, I mean, better defenses, I don't know. Pittsburgh and Indy have good defenses. The rest of the AFC is kind of weak. So
yeah, you look at who you can run on, and Pittsburgh, while they don't have the most intimidating defense, they do have the playmakers, like you said. Their front seven is what should intimidate you. And you look back to the previous meetings, or especially the first meeting between the Ravens and Steelers this year. Steelers were undefeated. A lot of question marks were surrounding whether the Ravens could actually run on the Steelers defense. And they did just that. I mean, they had a tremendous running day. Even in the second half, when they were trailing, they had a tremendous rushing day.
And without Ronnie Stanley.
Yeah, he goes down first half, and they make the adjustment mid-game with Orlando Brown sliding over and all that, and they still dominated on the ground. So I think, this Ravens rushing attack can run on anybody. It's just a matter of sticking to it. If you have a play or two that maybe doesn't go your way, does that instill any panic, or do you stick with it? How creative do you get with it? I think a big thing that and I could be way off base here, but just from an eye test perspective, watching these last couple games, it seems like the ball is just being, I don't know, it's put back in Lamar's hands in the sense that they're running the read option more.
Sure, I think that's a fair point. I mean, and a lot of people were questioning Lamar's health overall and the COVID, and I think he had an ankle thing that was kind of giving him fits. Listen, man, at the end of the day, if the Ravens aren't able to run a read option and have a three-headed rushing attack, they've got no chance. I mean, I don't think that's controversial at all. That's their bread and butter. But again, it comes down to, execution. 1st and 20 is not where this team's going to live very well. And if they're trailing in a game and it's 1st and 20, are they going to panic? Are they going to go off script? That's what it's going to come down to for me is that execution and willingness to stick to the game plan.
This offense is kind of getting back to what made them extremely successful in 2019, where you're not asking Lamar to be the big time passer or even be the big time play action passer. Just let him run the read option. You need one solid play, and now all of a sudden the defense is on their heels for the rest of the drive. They give up, an 8-yard run, a 9-yard run. That doesn't seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things in a drive, but now all of a sudden the defense doesn't know what's coming. And you pull out the read option, they don't know where it's going. And it sounds so simple and dumbed down, but I feel like to an extent that's true. And it kind of counters another dumb argument, which is almost like the polar opposite of dumb arguments, which is defenses have figured out Lamar Jackson. How many times have we heard that it's as simple as they figured him out because they play more defensive backs on the field, zone coverage and contain him.
Right. It's that's a tiring argument overall. I don't think it's they figured out Lamar Jackson. I think they figured out the way the Ravens want to play offense, and teams adjust and find ways to slow you down. I don't think that's uncommon for any player. But listen, I mean, in that Titans game, there were some empty yards, but the Ravens had 500 yards of total offense. So if that's getting figured out, then so be it. I mean, I think it's so tough because I do think there's some truth into the figuring out aspect of the offense, not so much the player. But I also think it's silly to say that when, the Chargers game from 2 years ago, sure, but that's not anywhere near the same quarterback that he is now. He has better weapons around him, and he is light years better passer than he was in that game. I think people, I don't know, he's a really polarizing player, and I've not always been the most in his corner person, but he's an exceptional player. He's an exceptional talent. Without him, this team is terrible. So questions about, what do you play him long term? You have to pay him long term. I mean, it's they've got nothing without him. So, and eventually he'll win a playoff game, and eventually the Ravens will win a playoff game that he starts, and will that keep people quiet? No. Nothing's going to stop people from thinking he's not good. I think it's fair to question him to a certain extent. I think it's fair to point out that he leaves throws on the table. There's throws he struggles to make, but how many quarterbacks would you rather have running this particular Ravens offense right now? None. I mean, Mahomes and Allen are great, but if you put them in this read option offense with weaker wide receivers, is it going to translate? I don't think so. We'll see. I'm excited. I hope they can handle their business on Sunday. And I don't know where you were heading next year, but is there anybody you'd like to see? Anybody you'd like to personally avoid in round one?
That's a big topic right now. Who do you want to face? And the Ravens could fall anywhere from 5 to 7, correct? I mean, they could be anywhere in that wild card window. So a lot of possibilities. Ones that jump out to you as most likely are probably facing the Bills or Steelers. And then I guess the last option would be facing either the Colts or the Titans, which is still a toss-up. Crazy. How crazy is that? That one of you mentioned it earlier, the Colts might not even make it, but the Titans might not make it either. And that just feels wrong, that this Titans team won't make the playoffs somehow. But really,
they're so bad defensively.
If anyone gets left out besides, Miami, and that's not to beat up on Miami. I mean, they've earned their right to be here. They're a pretty solid all-around football team, but just the fact that you've got two quarterbacks and you're pulling one mid-game to put in Fitzpatrick of all people, it's not like, look, no disrespect to him, but he's not he hasn't proven to be a great quarterback through his career. But if you're switching quarterbacks,
that was a 10-alarm fire win last week. I mean, I'm with you. I think the team that least strikes fear into anyone right now would probably be Miami. So I agree with you on that.
Besides them, if anyone else misses out on the playoffs in the AFC, even after you've added this seventh team, someone's going to miss this at least with a 10-win season. We know that. Everyone's at 10 wins right now. Colts on the outside looking in, they're at 10 wins. So we know that at a minimum, somebody's going to miss the playoffs with 10 wins. That's pretty wild as it is.
With the extra team, absolutely. And the fact that it could be 11 wins is astounding.
Exactly, yeah. And I keep saying this, but the NFL does not want to have that happen. I mean, it's already tough for them, to have to talk about it with a 10-win team missing. But if someone misses at 11, whoever it is, they do not want to have to deal with that.
And the Giants get in with 6 wins, and host the game. That's not going to go well.
So, as far as who I would not want to play, the Bills are the obvious team there. I do not want the Ravens to face the Bills in the first round, at least. I mean, if both of them win and they meet somewhere later in the postseason, that's fine. But this Bills team, I don't want to make any sweeping generalizations because the Chiefs are still the Chiefs and they're the team to beat until they lose, I guess. But the Bills are looking like just as good, just as formidable, just as scary, in my opinion. Probably don't have as imposing of a defense, but the way that offense is rolling, it's weird to say it, but the Bills are almost still underrated to an extent.
No question.
They're a good story, and everyone's talking about how great of a story it is with Josh Allen. They brought in Stephon Diggs, and he's just brought their offense to a whole new level. But that team is really, really good. And if it wasn't for...
Dude, they were really good last year. I mean, they should have beat the Texans in the first round last year.
I don't know about really... I mean, they were a playoff team, but they weren't, elite.
No, they're much better this year.
They're an elite team. And if it wasn't for a Kansas City team with only one loss, where could this Bills team be? I mean, heck, the Bills could have one more win. They lose on a Hail Mary,
right.
with Hopkins catching that insane pass. I mean, that you run that play back 10 times, I don't know if it happens again. 100 times, right. I don't know if it happens again. So it happened. I'm not overlooking it, but this Bills team is really scary to me. And you also have the element of the unknown. Like with the Chiefs, with all these other teams, really, you've seen how the Ravens match up against them this year or recently, especially the Steelers being a division opponent. You played Tennessee this year. You played Tennessee in the playoffs. You faced the Mahomes-led Chiefs plenty of times the last couple years. You know how you match up against them. You really don't know how you match up against this Bills team, and that's frightening to me. So I don't want to face the Bills.
And how about 7,000 fans at Orchard Park, New York in January, which could be a 15-degree blizzard day? I mean, there's just a lot of things about that group that I don't want to see. And I did mention I think their defense is a little weaker, but they're starting to get healthy. They've got some linebackers back. Jerry Hughes is having a big year rushing the passer. So they're not entirely devoid of talent on that side of the ball. So I'll just jump in and say they're top of my list of first-round teams I don't want to play as well.
And who I would want to play, I guess I want to say Steelers just because I really do feel strongly that if there was a round 3 between the Ravens and Steelers, the Ravens would win. You look at the 2 losses, they could have won both of them. Even the second one where they were just decimated by COVID. If Luke Wilson brings down that catch, it's a completely different game. Who knows what happens? I feel so strongly that the Ravens could beat them, but at the same time, it's the Steelers. I know it's still going to be a tough game. I know it's still going to be just a huge, stressful game. So I might say Colts, even though they do have the closest defense to the Ravens in terms of having a strong defense. Nothing about that offense scares me. Nothing about Phillip Rivers, in the postseason scares me, especially at this age. So I think team I would most like to face, I'll go with the Colts.
So for me, it's going to be Pittsburgh. I know that might be surprising, but I just don't think the Colts likely get to that spot. So I'm kind of pushing them back in general. The only reason that the Colts would scare me a little more is their defense is pretty good. They lost Costanzo on the offensive line. That's a huge loss for them, but they found a bit of a running game. Pittsburgh can't run the ball. I don't think that's a secret to anybody right now. Pittsburgh's quarterback can't push the ball down the field. They can get you on the underneath stuff, and they can nickel and dime their way up and down the field if they have to. But the Ravens know them really well, and I think that that's an advantage that the Ravens would have. But I mean, the Colts and the Steelers, to me, it would be pretty close on which team I'd rather play, but I think I'd rather play Pittsburgh. I know that there are some people out there that want the revenge tour. They want to play, either the Titans or the Steelers. I don't want anything to do with the Titans yet either. So I think they're in our heads. So for me, it's Pittsburgh and then the Colts. But we'll see. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say any, kind of like you said, there's no guarantees one way or the other. And guess what? The Ravens could play the Bills and blow them off the field. So I mean, it's a week to week league. It's the most insane league ever. Single elimination playoffs. No other league has it. So I think that's something to always keep in mind is, Kansas City could wait here. The Dolphins could get in. They could upset somebody, and the Dolphins could go to Kansas City and win. It's not likely to happen. But did anybody have the Titans coming to Baltimore and winning last year? So that's where I stand too. I would probably lean Steelers, but I mean, just win, baby.
Exactly. Yeah. Let's talk about this Bengals game because that's what it comes down to. Just one more game against a clearly inferior opponent. But with that being said, this Bengals team has won 2 in a row. They beat the Steelers and the Texans. 2, I'll say, solid teams. The Texans are not great. They've been very disappointing this year. But still, I think that game was in Houston as well. So Bengals playing their best football of the season right now, possibly, with a backup quarterback. Really just I don't know how they're doing it. I haven't watched closely enough to really get a sense, but I know we saw that Steelers game, and to me it was almost more that game was more about the Steelers choking and being bad and looking terrible than it was about the Bengals playing good. 1 week later, we see the Texans game. The Bengals win again. Now all of a sudden, hold on a second, this Bengals team, they're playing some pretty good football. So I don't know. You go back to that first meeting between the Ravens and Bengals this year. Defense dominated that game. I don't know how many sacks they had, but it was a ton. They forced some turnovers. It was just a huge day for the defense. They were rolling from start to finish. Joe Burrow was starting at the time before he went down with a season-ending injury. He was under duress all day. He didn't have a chance, no chance to even make anything happen. There was a guy in his face pretty much on every play. But yeah, I think the key to this one is, can the defense and the pass rush especially emulate that performance and do it again? Get in this quarterback's face, have a consistent presence, be there, finish when you actually get close. I'm tired of seeing Yannick Ngakoue get close on every single play and not finish. Please, I know he had a couple sacks last week, but please, let's finish consistently. So defense is the key for me here, and then offense, just keep doing what they're doing. Run the ball, and run it some more. Lamar, quietly, this is a long shot to happen, but within 100 yards of finishing with over 1,000 on the year, or 1,000 on the year, would be an insane day for him to, reach that 1,000-yard for the season threshold. But it is the Bengals, and you look at the team that he has absolutely torched in his brief career with his legs. It's the Bengals, from the insane spin move play last year to the very first start of his career where he carried it like 25 times or something crazy. They have had no answer for him as a running threat. Outside shot that he maybe has a huge day and hits that 1,000-yard threshold, but probably not. Don't let this Bengals team, who's kind of riding high right now, get any sort of confidence. Stifle them early. generate a turnover, at the very least, get them off the field quickly and get the ball in the hands of your reigning MVP where they can run the ball and really same formula that we've seen against these recent bad teams. I'm excluding the Cleveland game, Dallas, Jacksonville, New York. Run the ball, run it a lot, get a lead, protect it.
Yeah, and it's a lot of this is about belief. You know, the longer the Bengals believe they have a chance to win this game, the more than likely chance that they can actually figure out how to do it. You know, that right now they're looking at the offseason, and if the Ravens go up 14-0 early, it'd be pretty easy for the Bengals to say, all right, well, let's just get out of here. As opposed to if it's 17-14 Ravens at halftime, you start thinking, boy, it'd sure be nice to spoil their season again. This could be a job-saving type of win for Zach Taylor. I know people think he might be back anyways, but it's something to look at there too. So I think it's going to be – I think the Ravens should be able to handle them pretty easily. It's hard to predict blowouts, and as you know, I rarely do it. But if the Ravens play their B-plus game, even their B-minus game, they'll still win pretty comfortably. The talent gap here is pretty consistent. One thing to watch for, Giovanni Bernard's gotten their run game going a little bit, which I think has really helped Brandon Allen. So if they can take that away, which I think they can do, maybe Allen, gets into some mistake situations and the Ravens can force some big turnovers. As far as the prediction is concerned, I think the Ravens will win. I'm just going to say 31-20. I think it should be relatively comfortable, but if it becomes interesting, don't be surprised. The Ravens have played pretty flawless football the last 4 weeks, and not to make excuses for them, but that's really hard to do, which was one of my prevailing points going into this season is you don't win 12 games in a row very often. You don't do it as dominantly as they did it. So they've definitely faced some adversity this year. It wouldn't shock me if they face some Sunday, but I think they handle this team and they end up going to the playoffs, and from there we'll see what happens.
I also think they score 31. I have a 31-13 Ravens win, making the playoffs, and we'll go from there. And I think that'll do it for episode 134. Ian, it was great to have you back. Appreciate you jumping in.
No problem at all, man. Happy to be here. My dog's losing his mind in the background right now. So
feels like old times, right?
That's right.
So we'll be back next week. I'll be here with Jake at least, and who knows if the Ravens can pull this out, make the postseason. Maybe they draw a Saturday game. We could get the trio back together, get Ian and Jake on here at the same time, recording on a Sunday. I know the scheduling has been what has prevented this from happening. Just me and Ian work completely different work schedules. Yeah, fingers crossed that they make the playoffs in the first place. Thank you guys for listening. As always, spread the word, tell a friend. If you haven't already, tell them to join now. There's never a bad time to join the bandwagon. We're on every platform that you can listen to podcasts. Friends, family, coworkers, whoever. They like the Ravens, tell them about the podcast. All right, we'll be here next week. Talk to you then.